Hello again, all my YouTube friends. Welcome back to N9TAX Retro Lab. Going to have a short little video tonight. Just going to take a look at something I recently purchased. It's here in this package right here. I've wanted for a long time to have a pair of hot tweezers. I don't have a soldering iron that has multiple connections to it where I could just get a hot tweezer adapter, and I don't really feel like buying a station like that because they take up so much room on the desk, but still I'd like to have a set now and then for when they're handy for using to repair things. So I bought this, and I'll show you online here. What this is the, I guess you pronounce that Sequre, potentially. They seem to get good reviews, and it, you know, at $119 wasn't terribly expensive. So I want to get this thing out of the package and give it a try. I thought I would share that with you guys. If it ends up being a decent tool, maybe it's something you want to put in your arsenal as well. So sorry it's not really retro, but you know, I do have a retro board here that came out of a Mac G3 iMac that has some catastrophic battery failure on it, and we're going to use that to see if we can maybe pull some surface mount caps and other parts off of here and see how well this thing works. So a little bit of retro in the video tonight, and definitely a tool that you can use to fix your retro computers. Hopefully it's going to work well on things like surface mount capacitors, which we all know like to get changed in a lot of the older Apple gear. So let's take a look. Let's get this thing out of the package. Now this is still wrapped up. I have not opened this yet. We're going to open this together and see what this thing looks like. So, see if I can find a hole in the corner here. Incidentally, I also bought a pair of, these are 3mm wide tips that are supposed to be able to pull like some smaller three-legged regulators and that form factor, also transistors and things like that, so surface mount stuff. But let's take a look at what we got here. So it's a pretty nice case that it's in. Seems to be decently made anyway. It doesn't feel cheap. Okay, so we do have a Europe adapter here, which means this may not work. No, this has American flip out plug on it for our measly 120 volt outlets that we have here in the US, not like your beefy 240 volt outlets over in Europe. This is a 65 watt power adapter. It says it's QC3 power delivery, PD 65 watts. Feels kind of light. Doesn't feel like there's a whole lot going on inside of it, so it's likely mostly a switching supply. And I will tell you, it's going to take a tool to get this plug to fold out. It is recessed in there in just such a way that, like, legitimately, I'm going to use this little dental pick here in the hole. Yeah, there we go. That could have been a little bit better, because I should not have to use a tool to use the plug adapter. But I wonder how this works. Oh, this is interesting. I've never actually seen one like this. Look, so this has little slots. Let's see if that'll focus for you. There's little slots there that look like they're going to accept the prongs from the US outlet. So I'm going to guess if this is folded up, yeah, that thing is going to sit down at. That's interesting. Seems like there's less waste there than some of the methods I've seen in the past to have multiple countries adapters. So that's that. That's a 65 watt power delivery adapter there. Let's see what else is in here. It's a little plastic bag here. Looks like potentially, I haven't read any manuals or anything. This is first impressions. This is interesting. This looks like this has got a USB plug on one end, and it looks like to have a banana plug on the other end. I'm guessing that this is a ground. That maybe you would, I guess they're figuring you could stick it in your desktop PC and grab the ground from the USB. I don't know. Suppose we could test that if we wanted to. I don't see a manual in here, so we're not going to be able to read unless we look online. This is also looks like a ground. This also has the same banana, so I'm guessing there's a banana hole in the unit itself, and then there's a little ring terminal on that end. So that's interesting. Suppose if you're using, you want to ground it to protect your. So first impressions, it's light, but then again, I have a pine sill, and I don't know, for anybody that's used the pine sill, they weigh almost nothing, but that's a powerhouse of a little soldering iron. There's 2 buttons on it, and a little screen. I'm guessing it's running a similar OS to the pine sill. I know there's some open source OSs for these soldering irons nowadays that people are putting on these things. You could probably put the open source OS on this. I don't know what the value of that is. I never did it to my pine sill. It just works fine the way it is. Maybe some of the settings change or something. So it does look like it's a pretty good feeling USB cable. It's nice and silicone-y. I don't know if that's silicone, but it sure feels like it. It says PD 3.1, so power delivery 3.1 standard. And then there's a bag of tools and other things. Looks like there's maybe a little stand in there, and a screwdriver. I see a sponge. I don't use sponges because I don't like to water shock the soldering tips. Found they last a ton longer if you just use a brass wool sponge. So yeah, I'm guessing that this is a stand. It's a little, I'm not quite sure. I know how this thing is going to work. All right, well, potentially you just put it over the edge like that of the squeezy part, and it does hold it up off the bench. So there's also a little Phillips screwdriver, some very, very small Allen key wrenches, 2 Phillips screws, and some almost microscopic Allen screws in this bag. So that's looks like those hold the prongs on. This is cute. This is the manual QR code here. They've put it in a little bag to protect it from I don't know what. I'm guessing now that I'm looking at this a little bit more, there is a, oh yeah. This says station. HT station, Sequre. So my guess is that what I was looking at here, this very likely potentially bolts on there, because we did have the 2 screws. It's funny, there's a ton of holes. There's 6 holes in there, and then there's another 2 holes that are separate. Those could be for standing extra probes up in. But there's 6 threaded holes, so I don't know if you can put this. Maybe it allows you to put this thing on there in different directions. Let's get those Phillips screws out and see. Oh, look at that. This is an alligator clip that has a banana hole in it, and there is no banana plug hole in that. So we'll definitely have to bring the manual up and see if we can't understand what's going on with these ground leads and this alligator clip here. Oh man, I'm gonna lose my little microscopic. Wow. It might have made me happier if those Allen set screws had been just a little bit bigger. Those are easily going to get lost. Let's grab a screwdriver here. So anyway, let's see if we can assemble this. I'm just going to assume I know what I'm doing and do it the way I want to do it. As if I put this on here, maybe like that. Yep. That looks so bad there. I mean, maybe you can put that in different directions because they did give you 6 holes. But I feel like that's the way that goes. You know, because then you can, you know, put your iron in it like that. I don't know. You know, it's got a little recess here so you can put your wet sponge in there. Of course, we're not going to do that, but interesting. Very interesting. Well, there's some foamy stuff that we're probably not going to use. So let's, real quick, before I fire any of this up, let's pull up the manual and see if there's anything glaringly interesting in there that we need to take a look at. Okay, so instructions of HT140 hot tweezers. Product description, working temperature 50 to 500 C, 122 to 932 Fahrenheit, so this is a pretty good range. Support power supplies, PD 3.1, 3.0, 2.0, QC3, QC2, 5 to 28 volts DC. It's a pretty good range there. Yeah, so interesting. It supports the 2.0 standards too. You know, with the pine sill, it really needed those higher voltages. It didn't support the lower ones, so that's interesting. Maximum power 140 watts, probably input power. Tin melting time 2 seconds. I guess that depends on what you're melting, I suppose, right? Got a menu. Looks pretty bog standard as far as that goes in these, you know, these solder OS devices, whatever you want to call them. Level 1 and level 2 menu. Working temperature, set temperature. It's got some menus in there. You can set the screen brightness, sleep time. Yeah, it's pretty standard stuff. Max voltage. Let's see, operation guide. Press and hold the A key to switch between stop mode and work mode. So that's interesting. So that, to me, it sounds like you could turn it off. Now, I don't think the original software that came on my Pine Sill, I mean, it times out pretty quick and cools itself down, but I don't believe that there's a way that you can hold a button or do anything to turn it off. So that's kind of interesting. This must run a different software. Level 1 menus, short presses of this key, long presses of that key. Yeah, it's kind of all standard stuff. I thought maybe this thing would tell me how to put together the stand. Firmware upgrade. Okay, yeah, there you go. So, looks like we guessed correctly. Put the stand together right. Oh, so I really don't know what the other holes are for. I was expecting that this thing was going to, you know, show us that you could mount that in either these holes or these holes or those holes. Very interesting. And incidentally, that little tiny screwdriver that they gave, it seems a little small for those screws, but all right. You know what we missed here? What are these ground cables all about? I didn't see anything about that. That's what I went to the manual to find, and then I got sidetracked by all this information in there. Huh. My gosh, I don't think I see. There's certainly no pictures talking about those. Interesting. I mean, they have to be for grounding. But it doesn't make a lot of sense because, you know, I would think if you were going to use like USB to grab a ground off of, say, your PC, right? That would work. It would give you a ground point. And then, you know, maybe it would plug into the iron somewhere so that it was grounded, right? I mean, it should be getting a ground from the outlet. It's definitely an alligator clip that they've given us. So it's like USB on one end, and an alligator clip on the other end. Is this to ground your work? I mean, certainly it's not like to ground your hand, right? You wouldn't want to, ow, that kind of hurts. You wouldn't want to clip it on your finger, so I don't know. It's very curious stuff, but we're going to forgo that for now because we can't possibly ruin this board that I have because it's ruined in every possible way that is known to man. But there are some nice surface mount caps on there that we can take a look at, and I'm going to get you zoomed in here and see if we can see how this guy works. It's not a terribly long cord. One of the things that I did with my pine sill is I bought a pretty darn long cord with it so that I could, move around pretty good. I heard it jingle when it started up. Well, it looks like it's warming up here. I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can get you a close-up. So okay, looks like we're hovering around room temperature. We did say to hit, which button did it say to hit to turn it on? The A button. We'll assume that one's the A button. Nope. Oh, holding it in for a second has gotten it to warm up to 300 C, so it claims. Let's see if this thing will do anything here. We'll start with maybe this surface mount tantalum here. See if this thing is capable. Now I don't have any flux on here. I probably should put some of that on there, but let's just see what it does right out of the box. To be honest with you, I don't do Fahrenheit to centigrade conversion very well, but 300 feels like it might be a little bit cold. Let's see if we can figure out how to set this thing to Yankee temperature, as it were. So let's see, short press A or B, key loop the menu, long press A or B, enter menu level 2, long press A, B at the same time or no button, operation for 5 seconds. Okay, I figured it out. I've gotten this thing to be in Fahrenheit for us. See what this goes up to. Yeah, 572, that's pretty cold. I mean, even with, oh, I don't want to go that high. For such a large component, I think about 700 maybe would make. $635. It's weird because it feels like it makes big jumps in the settings. I'd like this thing to be about 650. I just can't seem to get there. Anyway, 672. We'll give that a try. This seems like it might loosen up something. Let's see if we can't. You know, it is altogether possible that no, look at that. She lifted her right off of there. Yeah. That's pretty reasonable. I mean, because you have a pretty decent ground plane there, you know, soaking up heat, and even this side of that cap is stitched with vias to something on the other side, so not too shabby. I wonder about these surface mount electrolytics. Can we pull these off? And again, this would probably go better if I had some flux on here. I know that. You don't have to scream at me in the comments. But, I mean, I'm just trying this thing like people are going to try it right out of the box and see how it works. See if we can get some useful amount of desoldering. It's interesting. This is what I was really hoping it would shine at, but doesn't seem to be doing as well as it did on that tantalum. Interesting. Yeah, we could try a little flux and see if it doesn't help. Let's see if we can't pull one of these off of here. Give it a little fluxy paste on either side there. Incidentally, I'm working right-handed too. Is probably half the problem. Doesn't seem to be putting a ton of heat into there because that flux didn't just immediately melt. But it does look like it's working to flow the solder this time. Some of these caps, they glue down, so it might not just come flying off of there. Interesting. I may need to give it a little pop with a knife. Pop that glue loose. It feels like the solder is desoldered. Potentially. Or flowing anyway. No. Did not get all the way underneath and clear that off. Interesting. Stop. Yeah, look at that. It's cooling right off. I don't know if you can see that. It says stop right there. So that's nice. I like that in the firmware. I might have to look at updating the PineCell firmware. I like being able to turn off the unit. It's a really good feature. So let's see these caps now. There's no glue under that, so I'm going to try putting these bigger tips and see if that doesn't help transfer the heat into there faster, because my guess is there's just a lot of thermal mass. You know, a lot of caps sit on ground planes and things like that. I don't really know what part of the circuit I'm working in. I'm just picking random components to work on. But yeah, we'll put these bigger tips in there and see if we can't transfer some heat in there a little bit faster, and that might get her working. For this, I'm going to need these tiny little, man, are those tiny, very tiny little wrenches that came with that thing. I don't know if I can give you a good idea of how small that thing actually is in my fingers there. The thing is ridiculously tiny. Wouldn't have minded seeing that be a little bit bigger. Tips are still a little hot, but I'm going to see if I can get the set screws loose here. Now, there's set screws on like all four sides, which is curious. Does that mean I got to loosen up potentially two of them to get these off? They don't feel real tight. Still at 100 degrees. It's pretty warm. They pull out pretty easy. Oh, incidentally, it got upset because it says no tip. No tip. Can you see that? Yeah. Yeah, I know. I know there's no tip. I took it out. So interestingly, it looks like these things don't really have an orientation. I think you could plug them in there sort of in any direction. There is a firm plug-in down at the bottom. So I guess I'll squeeze these and see if I can get them as square to one another as possible before I tighten them up. Okay. They're in there. Tighten up our set screws a little bit here. Gotta be careful. I don't want to strip anything out here. These screws are very delicate. We have all these holes here for holding our tools. We'll pretend that's what they're for anyway. So I'm going to give this another long press, put this back in work mode. See it heating up. Let's see if these will do any better. I'll try and position this so I can work with my left hand, and you can watch. So I'm gonna go ahead and just preemptively throw a little flux paste on there, and I'll help the heat flow in there. Now it looked like the solder melted a whole lot faster. Of course, with these surface mount caps, it kind of has to get down underneath, because the pins are long. They sort of go down to the center. This feels like it's coming loose better than the other one did. At least one side is. See, that's the other thing is, curiously, I don't know if both sides are getting as hot. Okay, well, we bent the pin up a little bit, but that did, even into this large floodplain over here of copper, it did take that off. Looks like without, yeah. I mean, this cap's reusable, right? I melted the plastic bit a little bit, but I didn't mess up the legs. I guess the better question at this point is, you know, could we use it to put the cap back on? Because that's what I typically have as a problem when I'm mounting these caps. Yeah, I mean, it's not destroyed. The legs are a little mangled. I'm not going to get too carried away here. I'm just going to put a little flux on these. I know that in order to do this properly, I should clean the solder off, put fresh solder on. I'm just going to freshen up this solder with some heat here and get it all smooth. Put a little bit of flux in the middle. We'll drop this cap back on. I know what you're saying. You know, that hot tweezers aren't for putting components on, but I don't like the way these caps solder when you do them one side at a time, because you kind of have to go back and forth with your iron and heat this side, heat that side, and I just thought it would be neat if this thing would heat both sides at the same time. You know, let that cap drop down into the solder. It's a little fiddly to try and do that. Yeah, this is probably best just used as a removal tool, not an installation tool. So there's some smaller little caps here we can try and take off. I mean, yeah, it made stupid quick work of that. You know, another thing it was supposed to take off is these little three-legged ICs here, whether they be like voltage regulators or transistors, with these wider pins. Oh yeah, I mean, look at that. You see that? See that thing on there? I mean, that thing came right off. That's actually kind of nice. They make wider tips for this too. So, wow, yeah, that's amazing. Those things are a bugger to get off, you know. Look at that, man. Man, that just makes stupid quick work of those. I'll try and give you a better view of what I just did there. But these so it's these tiny little three-legged transistors. You see the two of them just above that large package there, next to the 8-legged IC. You see the one is missing and the other one is there. That's those little 3-legged transistors. Those are a bugger to get off with just a soldering iron. So I think for the money, you know, I'm gonna have to mess around with this thing a little bit and see, but it really feels like this is it's going to be a decent tool. And we're going to check one thing real quick. Let me grab a tool. I have a thermometer that's made for testing soldering irons, so you can measure the tip temperature. Let's see how accurate that is. I'm back. I found my Hako thermometer. It was hiding something fierce. You don't use it very often, so I keep the battery out of it, because although I've rarely ever seen a 9-volt leak, it would probably just kill it if it stayed inside. So this thing's pretty neat. Just a little thermometer here. You put your soldering tip at the junction of these 3 wires. Oh, there's like a little blob of solder there, and it will tell you how much. Okay, we're set to Fahrenheit. 72 looks correct for the room. Put this thing back on work. I'll watch it warm up. See what it claims to get up to here. Looks like 672 degrees. Alright, so we're going to set one of these on the little wire. I'd say it's bouncing around there, around 672, up and down a little bit. I'd say that's pretty good temperature regulation. Let's try the other one. Yeah, look at that. Well, all in all, I have to say, I'm kind of impressed by this little guy. You know, it's not the most solid feeling thing I've ever felt in my life, but it was only $100, well, $120. And it's come with a nice little stand and a nice little case to keep it in. Temperature regulation is good. It seems to do a pretty good job at pulling components off the board, even with the little tiny, and these are some extremely tiny tips that came on it. I don't know if that'll focus or not. Yeah, that's probably a little bit small to be useful for the stuff that I'm going to do with it, but these larger tips seem to work okay. And there's some that are cut at an angle. I probably would get a set of those, and maybe an even wider one. I know I looked at a 5mm set, so the flat on the end of them is 5mm wide instead of these 3s. Although these 3s seem pretty capable of getting a lot of things off the board, there are some bigger things that I might want to try and get off. So yeah, I'm not, you know, Sequre did not send me these. I'm not sponsored in any way. I just happen to buy them for my own use and consumption. Thought I'd share them with you guys, but I give them my seal of approval. It seems like a pretty good tool. We didn't test it with my battery bank, but I can't imagine why it would have a problem with that if it's working with this 65-watt adapter that came with it, because I know my battery bank is capable of like possibly even 240 watts. I think it was like the most powerful one you could buy, Anchor made. So yeah, and that's the other thing too, with it being USB like the Pine Sill, I can put it in my road kit, take it to my club meetings and things like that, and be able to use it there. And that's really handy because, you know, having good soldering on the road is something I really never had. I mean, you could always take a station with you, but something so convenient as these little USB devices they're making nowadays. It's pretty good stuff. So Anyway, that's it for the video. Probably a little bit longer than I originally intended it was going to be, but I feel like we tested this thing out at least reasonably. You know, if there's something that you'd like to see me do with it, we could probably do a little short or something and see if it'll pull some sort of component off the board that maybe you're thinking about, and you know, just let me know in the comments. But I'll leave a link to the, you know, the Amazon page where you can get these in the comments, and if you want one, you know where to go. Well, I'm back. I had to get everything back out again and shoot one more little clip about this video. I will insert this before the end, but this is recorded after everything, and I was putting this thing away, and something about it did disappoint me. So here's the package that it came in, and I was thinking, you know, it's going to be nice if I could just put everything back in here and close this. But alas, I cannot close this without taking this stand apart. That's really pretty disappointing to me. I wanted to really love this thing, and now I just like it quite a bit, but I don't really love it. Figure out the stand where it could fit in the case put together. Sequre, seriously. Help people in the future, because nobody wants to have to take screws out of something. I know you gave us a little tiny screwdriver that would barely get those screws out to save your life, but nobody wants to take screws out of something to put it back in its case. So anyway, that's my honest opinion on this thing. I love it a lot less now. It's a great tool as far as how it solders and for the cost, but man, you just missed it in that one particular instance. Anyway, here's me telling you goodbye. Well, that's it for this video. Thanks for joining me again, and you know, taking a look at a new tool that I had here. If you enjoyed the video, I certainly would appreciate you hitting the like button. If you'd like to see more videos like this and see what kind of shenanigans and things that I buy and work on, and absolutely feel free to hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel quite a bit and gets us out there. So anyway, goodbye for now. We'll see you in the next video.